Hello guys and girls, and welcome to today's lesson. For this part of your assignment today, you are going to be using this video to check your answers to the study guide that we began in class yesterday. If for some reason you don't have your study guide, I have posted a blank copy of the study guide along with this assignment today, but you will need to make your own copy of the study guide. You can do that just by clicking File, Make a Copy on your Google Doc, and then you will be able to type in your answers to the study guide. Another thing that I wanted to add before we get in and start checking our answers, I mentioned this to some of my classes yesterday. Remember that I don't take study guides for a grade because study guides are not for me. A study guide is for you to help you study for the test. It's also important to remember that a study guide is only as good as you make it. So I'm not going to be taking up these study guides. I'm not going to be making sure that you write everything down word for word exactly like it is in the video. However, as the person who created your tests and as the person who created this study guide, I will say that the answers that I am about to share with you are pretty closely aligned with what you can expect to see on the test. Remember, the test is going to be on Friday this week. So if I were you, I would probably take some time to make changes to my study guide if what you have is maybe pretty different from what you see on the screen, or maybe you wrote something that was not quite as detailed. I would just encourage you to make this worthwhile, right? And then also, I've posted some materials that you can use to study for your test as well. Like I've already said once, the test is going to be on Friday, so you have plenty of time to prepare. Part of that is doing the study guide, but then also take a look at those review materials so that you can just make sure that you understand everything that you need to know to be prepared for your test on Friday. So our study guide was broken down into several different parts. Part one was the life of Shakespeare, and your first question was, in what year was Shakespeare born? The answer that I'm looking for on that question is 1564. Obviously, this is a video, so feel free to pause at any point if you need some time to add to your study guide or make changes to your study guide. Question number two, what is the name of the famous theater in London where many of Shakespeare's plays were performed? That is the Globe. When we did our escape room at the very beginning of this unit, you guys got to take a look at some different parts of the Globe, but that was something that was very important and is still standing today to help commemorate Shakespeare. Now we're going to move on to Act 1, Scene 1. Question 1 says, explain Aegis's wishes for his daughter. What does he think should happen if she does not follow his wishes? Remember, Aegis is Hermia's dad. In the beginning of the play, Aegis wanted Hermia to marry Demetrius, and if she said no, he thinks that she should die if she doesn't marry him. So remember, he goes to see Theseus, excuse me, in the beginning of the play, and asks Theseus to allow him to invoke Athenian law. And under Athenian law, because we talked about how women were seen differently during this time, if Hermia refused to marry Demetrius like he wanted, then he could have her put to death. So our correct answer for number one is he wants her to marry Demetrius. He thinks she should die if she doesn't marry him. Question 2, what plan do Lysander and Hermia come up with to solve their problem? Their plan is to run away to his aunt's house and get married in secret. We talked about how Lysander's aunt lives outside of Athens, and so if they run away to her house, then they will no longer be under Athenian law. So that is their plan. Why is Helena jealous of Hermia? Helena is jealous of Hermia because remember, she loves Demetrius. Helena is in love with Demetrius, but Demetrius doesn't want anything to do with her. He wants to marry Hermia. Moving on to Act 1, Scene 2. Why are these men who aren't usually actors putting on a play? They are hoping to perform their play for the Duke and Duchess, Theseus and Hippolyta, on their wedding night. We learned when we talked about Act 1, Scene 2 that these were tradesmen, so they were just normal working men, but again, they were hoping to perform a play for Theseus and Hippolyta. Which of the tradesmen is put in charge of the play, aka who is the leader? Quince, remember he's the one that is trying to get them all together to rehearse. He is like the director of the play. He is the one that's in charge. Who is chosen to play the lion, and why is he given this part? Snug was the one who was chosen to play the lion in the play. If you remember back to Act 1, Scene 2, he is concerned that he is not going to be able to memorize the lines, and so he asks Quince what the lion's parts are in the play, and Quince tells him all he has to do is roar. When and where is their first rehearsal scheduled? They plan to meet the next night by the giant oak tree in the Duke's Forest. And as we remember from Act 1, that is also where Hermia and Lysander plan to meet, is in the Duke's Forest. Moving on to Act 2, Scene 1, this is where we are introduced to some magic in the play. Where did Titania get a child, and why does Oberon want it? Remember, Titania was best friends with a woman from India. That woman worshipped Titania and was her friend, but the woman unfortunately died giving birth to the child. And Oberon is hoping to get the child because he wants that child to be one of his pages, basically someone who works for him. What makes the flower that Oberon wants so special? The reason that that flower was magicked is because it was struck by one of Cupid's arrows. Remember, Cupid was aiming at a woman. He missed. It landed on the flower. And now the juice of that flower will make a person fall in love with the first living thing that they see. Question number 3. When Robin gets back with what Oberon wanted, what second use does Oberon assign to Robin? Remember, when Robin was gone, Oberon overhears Demetrius being pretty mean to Helena in the forest, and so he wants Robin, aka Puck, to put the juice on the flower on the eyes of the Athenian man that he saw in the forest, and we know this is where things really start to get a little confusing and a little sideways in the story. Moving on to Act 2, Scene 2. How has Robin messed up, although he doesn't know it yet? Remember, he sees Lysander and Hermia asleep. They are not sleeping close to each other, so he assumes that it is Demetrius and Helena. So he gets confused. He thinks Lysander is Demetrius. He puts the potion on Lysander's eyes, and now Lysander is in love with Helena. Act 3, Scene 1. What does Robin do to Bottom? Pretty infamous part of the story. He turns his head into the head of a donkey. Remember, Robin sees the tradesmen when they meet up in the forest to rehearse for the play. He realizes that Bottom is a very interesting person, we'll say, and so he decides to do what Puck does best. He pulls a little prank, and he gives Bottom the head of a donkey. What is the result of the spell that Oberon cast on Titania? It just so happens that when she wakes up, the first living thing that she sees is Bottom, who has the head of a donkey, and so that is who she falls in love with. Act 3, Scene 2. What is Oberon's reaction to the results of the spell he cast on Titania? He's very happy. Remember, Oberon's plan all along was to make Titania fall in love with something absolutely ridiculous, and he was not going to break the spell until she agreed to give him the child. And so when he realizes that Titania has fallen in love with Bottom, who has the head of a donkey, he is very happy. How does Helena react to Demetrius's vows of love? Helena gets pretty upset. She's mad at all of them, but she thinks that they're all just teasing her. Demetrius, Lysander, and Hermia as well. She thinks it's all just a prank or a joke that they're pulling on her. How does Puck keep Demetrius and Lysander from fighting? Remember, he gets them very lost in the forest by mimicking the other person's voices. So when he's talking to Demetrius, he sounds like Lysander. When he talks to Lysander, he sounded like Demetrius. And his whole goal was to get them very lost and exhausted so that they would fall asleep in the forest. What physical feature does Hermia believe Helena has exploited to win Lysander's love? Her height. Remember, that was the whole section in Act 3 was Hermia believing that the only reason that these men no longer love her and the reason that they love Helena is because Helena is taller than her. Moving on to Act 4, it says, draw a diagram of the four lovers, who is in love with whom by the end of this scene. We can do this just with some arrows. We know that by the end of Act 4, Scene 1, things have really gone back to the way that they should be. Lysander loves Hermia, and Hermia loves Lysander. That's why we have the arrows pointing both ways. Demetrius loves Helena, and Helena loves Demetrius. What is Theseus's decision concerning the four lovers? Remember, he finds them asleep on the forest floor, and he decides that they are all going to be married alongside he and Hippolyta that day. Act 4, Scene 2. Besides his own well-being, what other piece of good news does Bottom bring? So remember, at the end of Act 4, Scene 1, Bottom wakes up. He no longer has the head of a donkey, and he goes to find the tradesmen, and he tells them that they are going to the palace to perform the play. Not only have Theseus and Hippolyta gotten married, but also our Athenians have gotten married as well. Moving on to Act 5, which characters die in the play within the play? How and why do they die? So we're talking about the play that the tradesmen perform. Pyramus and Thisbe are the ones who die. Pyramus died by his own sword. Remember, we watched that in the movie, Bottom being over the top, acting that part out. If you remember, he thinks that Thisbe was eaten by a lion, and so he dies by his own sword. And then Thisbe actually dies in a similar way when she realizes that Pyramus has died. Who blesses Theseus and Hippolyta with a magical chart at the end of the play? That would be Oberon and Titania. At the very end of the play, they go through and bless all of the couples who have been married. And then which character suggests that the audience consider whether the entire play has been a dream? That was Puck, aka Robin. So the play is called A Midsummer Night's Dream. What dream is the title referring to? Find as many explanations as you can. Here are some of your possible answers. Hermia, Helena, Demetrius, and Lysander think their experience in the woods could have been a dream. Bottom and Titania also feel like what happened to them could have been a dream. And then Puck tells us at the end that maybe the whole story was just a dream and none of it actually happened. Okay, so at this point, your study guide should be completely filled in. If you missed anything, I would encourage you to go back, rewind, pause the video if you need to, make any changes that you feel like you need to. Again, a reminder, like I said at the beginning, our test is on Friday, so make sure you are prepared. If you have any questions, let me know.